Here are the key takeaways from a speech and remarks by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance on Wednesday, covering foreign policy, domestic spending, and his political future. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said Washington is making progress in negotiations with Iran, but stressed that President Donald Trump's firm red line remains unchanged, preventing Tehran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. The comments come amid ongoing diplomatic efforts aimed at reducing tensions while maintaining pressure on Iran's nuclear program.
So is the U.S. even talking to the Iranians right now, or where are things at this point?
Yeah, so look, obviously these negotiations are very sensitive. I'm not going to tell you everything because we're trying to have a productive conversation. I spent a good amount of time on the phone with both Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff this morning, a number of our friends in the Arab world this morning. Look, I think that we are making progress. The fundamental question is, do we make enough progress that we satisfy the president's red line? And the red line is very simple. He needs to feel confident that we've put a number of protections in place such that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon.
And can I ask you, Mr. Vice President, when approaching the war with Iran, do you agree with the president's position that Americans' financial situations should not be a consideration in that decision-making process?
Well, I don't think the president said that. I think that's a misrepresentation of what the president said. But look, I agree with the president that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. We're obviously engaged in a very aggressive and very engaged diplomatic process to try to ensure that that doesn't happen. And the president has a lot of options, as he said repeatedly. There are options diplomatically, there are options on the military side, but the fundamental goal here is the president wants to make the world safe, but particularly the American people safe from Iran having a nuclear weapon. And one final point I'll say on that is, nuclear proliferation is one of those challenges that people don't realize. It's the biggest threat to America's national security, and it's not obvious until it is. Because what happens if Iran gets a nuclear weapon? Then multiple Gulf Arab countries are going to want to get a nuclear weapon. Then multiple countries from there are going to want to get a nuclear weapon. The goal of preventing nuclear proliferation is probably the single most important thing that we can do to keep our people safe for the long term. It's absolutely a worthy goal.
Vance also announced that the federal government will defer $1.3 billion in Medicaid funding for California. The move comes as his task force increases scrutiny of healthcare and hospice services, particularly in California, where previous audits have raised concerns about weak oversight and large-scale fraud.
First, we're announcing that the federal government is deferring $1.3 billion in Medicaid reimbursements from the state of California. And the simple reason is because the state of California has not taken fraud very seriously, and because of that, we see a lot of the consequences that I just referenced. And again, let me highlight the fact that this really is two separate victims. So there are California taxpayers and American taxpayers who are being defrauded because California isn't taking its program seriously.
You're going to look at red and blue states. The president, when he posted about you becoming the fraud czar last month,
what is happening is that the leadership in New York are just not taking the fraud issue seriously. They're not using these anti-fraud control units to actually investigate and indict the fraud. So what are we going to do to fix that? Today, we are sending across 50 Medicaid programs, we are sending letters that will require them to show that they are effectively and aggressively prosecuting Medicaid fraud in their states. And if they do not aggressively prosecute Medicaid fraud, we are going to turn off the money that goes to these anti-fraud units. And I would say a couple things about this. You may think, obviously, this is a Republican administration. We're all proud Republicans up here. You may think that this is purely a red state or blue state issue. That's actually not true. We see Medicaid fraud issues in Ohio, the state that I used to represent in the United States Senate. We also see Medicaid issues, fraud issues in a state like Maryland, which is obviously a very blue state. But both Ohio and Maryland have worked with us to take this issue seriously. They've worked with the guys behind me. They've worked with our entire team to make sure that they take fraud seriously. Again, it's one of the most amazing things about our country. I think all of us, this does not have to be a red state or a blue state issue. This is just basic good government. However, states like California, states like Hawaii, states like New York have completely not taken the fraud issue seriously in the Medicaid program. And so for those states that refuse to get serious about fraud, we are going to turn off that anti-fraud money. And if we continue to find problems, we can turn off other resources within their state Medicaid programs as well. Our goal here is not to do that. We don't want to turn off any money. What we want to do is ensure that people are taking fraud seriously. We want to protect Medicaid. We want to protect Medicare. But we can't do that if the states that are administering those programs are allowing those programs to be fleeced by fraudsters. So we encourage, whether it's California or New York or Maryland or Ohio, we encourage people to work with us.
On domestic politics, Vance dismissed questions about a potential future White House run. He said he is focused on carrying out his current responsibilities, stating that his priority is doing good work in the job that the American people already elected me to do.
Oh man. What I think is, there are a few topics that I want to talk about less than what office I'm going to run for years down the road when I'm having a good time and trying to do good work in the job that the American people already elected me to do. Look, I've answered this question probably in any number of ways. I love Marco. I think he's a great Secretary of State. He's become a very, very dear friend. But I think both of us are very much focused on accomplishing the American people's business right now. If I was the American people, there are a few things that I would hate more than a person who's barely been in one office for a year and a half, who's angling for a job 2.5 years down the road. Let's do a good job now. We just got to keep at it.